Now that we've really talked about how Europe has gone about ending ethnic violence, and ending is probably not the right word, but dramatically reducing it compared to the past in Europe, we do want to look at a few more terms and just to talk about, just again, I have 4 terms here that are not like words you hear a lot, but they do come up quite frequently, not just in the European context, but in contexts around the world where there's parallels to these ideas. So I just want to give you these terms so that you can recognize them when you see them. I do not know. They will come up again in some other things. I don't think that they're like terms like I'm going to ask you on an exam, what is this, or anything like that. But I do want you to be familiar with these ideas. So the first term is this thing called balkanization. Now, if you remember from your map quiz, the Balkans include which countries? So there's this thing called the Balkan Peninsula. The Balkan Peninsula is essentially, at the tip of the Balkan Peninsula, the easiest way to think about this is Greece. But above Greece is what used to be the former Yugoslavia. And what happened after the end of the Cold War is Yugoslavia essentially not just broke up, but basically violently exploded, I guess you could say. Just lots of civil wars, lots of ethnic fighting between the Serbs and the Croats and the Bosnians and the Albanians and all this kind of stuff. So balkanization is essentially a term that is used to talk about when a larger territory breaks into smaller units. So we sometimes refer to this in like when the Soviet Union broke up, we can maybe say it balkanized. Or Georgia, the country of Georgia is sort of in this process of possibly balkanizing, breaking up a little bit. So that's what that is. It's a larger territory breaking into smaller units. And again, this idea of Balkans, you can just think about Yugoslavia, and that sort of helps you think about that. Enclave. An enclave is a culturally distinct territory within the territory of a different culture. So probably the easiest way to think about this would be, think about a city that has a Chinatown. A Chinatown is an enclave, is a culturally distinct territory within the territory of a different culture. Like you're in Chinatown, you're not just in, San Francisco, or you're in this particular part of San Francisco. Enclaves, we'll see this, again, this is very common in the Balkans, where you'll have an enclave of Serbs living in the middle of a bunch of, a Croatian area or something like that. We'll see this in other places. When we talk about Russia, for example, we'll talk about Armenia has an enclave inside of Azerbaijan. Like there's a little chunk of Armenia that's surrounded by Azerbaijan. That is an enclave. I wouldn't say the opposite, but another way of talking about that would be an exclave, which would be essentially, and again, those are the same things. It's a culturally distinct territory within a territory of a different culture. The difference is sort of where you're standing. In the same way that immigration and emigration with an I and an E are really the same thing, just depending on where you're standing. Am I leaving? Am I somebody who's coming into the country, or am I somebody who's leaving that country? The same person. It just depends on where you're essentially standing. Another term is ethnic cleansing. Now, you've probably heard of this because this comes up every once in a while, but it's culturally purifying a territory. It doesn't necessarily mean killing everybody off, but killing everybody of a particular ethnicity off, but it can. What it means is culturally purifying. So if that means getting people to move, great. If that means removing this by essentially making the next generation not that fits into this as well. This is one of those things that we tend not to be very cool with today in the world, and yet it happens all over the place, ethnic cleansing. I wouldn't say an extreme version, but if you sort of take it to its logical limit, we would be talking about, say, genocide, which of course is awful. One more term is a term, this is a weird one. It doesn't come up a lot, but it does come up. It's called irredentism. Irredentism is where you want to expand your culture's territory to its largest historical extent. So for example, if Mexico had irredentist, sort of an irredentist policy, it would want to reabsorb the southwest U.S., which used to be part of Mexico. This creates a lot of problems when you have, especially in Europe, this was the case. Like throughout history, like Hungary had control of a large area and now has control of a smaller area. Hungary might get irredentist policy and want to sort of reabsorb. This is kind of what happens with Hitler. Is Hitler says, I want to get back to when Germany was great again. I want to make Germany great again, which means we need this part of the Czech Republic, and we need this part of Austria, and we need this, and we need this, and we're going to expand Germany to include all those things. Obviously, that creates a lot of problems there, and it's almost always built on an ethnic sort of idea. And so when we're talking about ethnic violence, not only in Europe, but around the world, we'll often use these terms to help us think about that. So when you see those terms, that's sort of a way to start thinking about that. All right, thanks, guys.